Good to have you with us on this. Let's see, what day is it? It's Wednesday. Doggone it, it's hump day. Coming to you from Washington, D.C. Wendy and I have moved to the nation's capital, and there'll be an announcement on my career coming up in the coming days. But we're excited about this. We're broadcasting today from the Center for American Progress. This wonderful organization has been great to the Ed Schultz radio show and video and podcasting operation for the last 15 years. They've been absolutely outstanding to work with, and I appreciate the use of their facility very much, and we'll talk more about the great work that they have been doing. All right, you know, I don't know how many shootings we have to have. I don't know how many kids have to get killed. I don't know how many innocent bystanders have to have their lives lost and friends and relatives go through the grief. We are a changing society. Now, I want to be right up front. A lot of people don't like my activities. I come from the middle of the country. I love to fish. I love to hunt. I got deer rifles. I got shotguns. I've shot more pheasants than any of these critics over on the right who say that they're grabbing guns. And I think I can speak with authority. In fact, I know I can. As a sportsman, I don't feel a shred of any kind of threat whatsoever that I will ever lose my firearm unless I break the law. Sportsmen understand this better than anybody. And I do think that there are a number of sportsman alliances around the country that could step up and help with the common sense moves that are taking place when it comes to gun violence in this country. The sportsmen who think that the Democrats or the president are on the march to take their firearms, number one, you're on the wrong side of the issue. Number two, you're wrong totally across the board. You don't have a shred of evidence. No one's taken your firearm and no one's going to. But if you do things in society, break the law, those circumstances might change. So be who you are, what you are, where you go, and how you do it the way you've always done, and nobody's going to take your firearm. Now, this idea of background checks. Background checks are nothing more than a security measure. They're not a measure of confiscation. And somewhere along the line, the politicians who want change in Washington have certainly got to define the narrative of exactly what is happening here and why are we doing it. I've been working with a lot of European colleagues as of late. They cannot believe the freedom in our society to own firearms. We are a very unique country in two regards. Number one, we're the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have universal health care. And we also have the most freewheeling laws when it comes to owning and using firearms. And I'm talking about automatic, semi-automatic, handguns, the lot. The rest of the world is looking at the country right now and saying, what in the hell is wrong with America? And hiding behind the Constitution and drumming up charges of motivation to confiscate are outrageous. And if ever got to that point, that I would change my position on that. But I'm very confident that that's not what this is all about. Jan Schakowsky joins us. She is the vice chair of the House Progressive Caucus, Congresswoman from Illinois, great friend. Jan, first of all, thank you for your Christmas holiday card. I appreciate it. Your family's beautiful.
Thank you. Kids and dogs. Yep.
I want to start with your thoughts on what unfolded yesterday. Here's the president first making the announcement saying enough is enough.
Our unalienable right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, those rights were stripped from college kids in Blacksburg and Santa Barbara and from high schoolers at Columbine and from first graders in Newtown. First graders. And from every family who never imagined that their loved one would be taken from our lives by a bullet from a gun. Every time I think about those kids, it gets me mad. And by the way, it happens on the streets of Chicago every day.
Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, your response to what unfolded yesterday and where we're going with all of this.
Well, I was in the room when he made that very emotional speech. In those silences, when he wasn't speaking, he was wiping away some tears, which is not typical of the president. Not such an emotional guy most of the time. But this, especially the children at Sandy Hook, really got to him. But also the fact that every day there are so many people who are killed by gun violence, over 30 in the United States, and it's enough is enough. And so the proposals that he was making, understand, we have some background check rules, except that about 40% of the gun purchases somehow are not covered. Mm-hmm. And what this executive order does is say that no matter where you conduct your business, in a store, at a gun show, over the internet, that will have to be covered. You will have to have a license to do those sales, and there will have to be background checks. And the other thing that I was not aware of is that if you register as a corporation or a trust, that you can buy machine guns and sawed-off shotguns, and that some 90,000 applications have been made to be able to purchase through that big loophole. Mm-hmm. That will be closed. That will be closed right now. So, background check. So simple. In fact, it seems that it's estimated that about 2 million guns have been kept out of the wrong hands because of the current background checks. Imagine if we really tighten that, if we enforce that, how many people that would be saved because guns would not get into the wrong hands. That's all he's saying.
Here's Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. This, of course, is red meat on the campaign trail to rile these people up to get out the vote on the right wing. Here's their thoughts.
President Obama is announcing new executive orders to try to go after our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Well, I can tell you right now, those executive orders are not worth the paper they're printed on, because when you live by the pen, you die by the pen.
What is this? This is crazy.
Well, it's just wrong. It's just lies as well. Look these are the same people who are saying that that people on the so-called terrorist watch list should be able to buy guns. Can't get on a plane, but you should be able to buy guns. So, they are so extreme that they actually want people, for example, that are not allowed to collect their own Social Security check. It has to go to a third party, or get their veterans benefits because they're not able to manage themselves. That those people, the NRA says those people should still be able to buy guns. It's just crazy.
Well, across the board, collectively, the right wing, the people that want to be president from the Republican Party are against what President Obama is doing. Jeb Bush threw this out there about whether he has the power to do it.
He doesn't have the right to do it. He's doing it without the executive authority to do it. And every time he does that, look, heads explode and people get very angry. I do too. I just think that the Constitution is worth protecting.
All right. Is he right or wrong? Does the president have the executive authority to do this?
He absolutely has the authority. That if you are in the business of selling firearms, then you have to get a license and you have to conduct background checks. It's the way that the law has been enforced, and so the president is saying, we're going to do better. We're going to make sure that all of the sales of guns, all of the profits that are, if you're making money selling a gun, and by the way, there's no limit on that, even if it's a couple of guns, then you are going to have to require a background check, and you're going to have to get a license. It's really that simple, and that we're going to make sure that all of these sales and all that the what we call the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, the NICS system, that we're going to make sure that we report all those people who are not able to get guns to that system so that they can be prevented from those purchases. He also talked about more money for mental health. That's what the right wing is saying is the only problem, and the president is saying, yes, we should spend more money, and about $500 million more is being allocated under his proposals, and that, the Congress is going to have to agree to that, but we all agree with that.
Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, I want you just to take a moment and, for our listeners and viewers, describe the gun lobby in Washington.
Well,
how powerful are they? How intimidating are they? How aggressive are they? Give us a sense, your estimation of the gun lobby.
Well, they're intimidating, especially to members of Congress. If you did a national referendum on what the president is suggesting and asking the American people if they agree, it would be overwhelming, including people who are gun owners like yourself, and even members of the National Rifle Association would agree with that. They have intimidated members of Congress. Why? Because of the kind of money that they put into campaigns and the squeaky wheel effect that they mobilize their hardcore members. But there are other players on the field right now, and the father of one of the children killed at Sandy Hook made it very clear that they are not going away, that people who believe in this sensible gun safety legislation are not going to go away.
Okay.
And I think ultimately, even in this upcoming campaign, Hillary Clinton has made it very clear that she endorses this, that the people who are against any kind of gun safety, I hope, will finally be marginalized by the common sense of the American voters.
Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, always great to visit. I appreciate your time. We'll do it again. Thank you.
Thanks, and anxious to hear about your new plans, Ed.
Well, we're close to announcing. It's going to be fun. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Bye.
You bet. This is Ed Schultz, News and Commentary. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team bring you this production from the Center for American Progress in Washington, D.C. We're right back. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
I don't understand why the American people don't take a step back and say, well, let's see if this works. Jan Schakowsky says the president has the authority to do it. Some people out on the campaign trail, such as Jeb Bush, former governor of Florida, says no, he doesn't have the executive authority to do it. You know, sometimes we get to a point we don't know who the hell to believe. But I don't understand why the American people aren't collectively willing to go along with this. And I'm talking about the antis. What if it works? How do you know it's not going to work? How many firearms are you going to lose? And the answer is none. there's going to become a system of checks and balances that is going to curb gun violence. That's the attempt here. No one knows more about that than Shannon Watts. She is the founder of Moms Demand Acton for Gun Sense in America. Shannon, good to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Will this work? What the president's doing, will it work?
Well, we know that gun laws work. When you look at the 18 states, for example, that have closed their background check loophole, you see mass shootings, you see police killings, you see domestic homicides with guns cut almost in half. We know that laws work. So putting more laws in place will help. In fact, this narrows the loophole that we've asked Congress to close for years, and they won't. It does not close the loophole, but it does narrow it, and that means saved American lives.
The timing of this, why has it taken, in your opinion, so long for the president to come to this conclusion? Was it just a matter of giving Congress an opportunity to do something? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the whole country has watched in amazement as Congress has turned a blind eye to the bodies that pile up in this country every year due to gun violence. 30,000 Americans are shot and killed every year. Hundreds of thousands more are injured, and yet Congress does nothing. Nothing. What
about the mental health aspect of this, of the resource the president wants to put to it? Is that going to be a reality?
Yeah, I mean, look. Do we have a mental health issue in this country? Yes, we do. But is it any different than any other developed nation? No. Data shows that we watch the same movies, we play the same video games, we have the same rates of mental illness, yet you are 20 times more likely to be murdered with a gun in the United States. And that is because of our lax laws. It is wonderful to address mental health, but that is not the issue in gun violence. It is the guns.
The campaign trail is hot with this subject. This is Donald Trump on the trail last night responding.
They're not going to take your guns away, folks. They're not going to take your guns away. Not going to do it. They're trying. You saw what he did today. Executive orders. He wants to do. Wouldn't it be nice if they could actually get Congress together and, do it the old-fashioned way where people work and they this and they cajole and they have drinks together and they get along or they don't get along and they come up with some... Just wants to sign executive orders all the time. No good.
What do you make of Trump's position? It sounds like he is a candidate that would probably move on common sense gun measures. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's certainly not the impression I get. The response yesterday from many presidential candidates was to gin up more fear and to use the talking points of the NRA about confiscation. It's ridiculous. Right now we already have background checks for licensed gun sales in this country. About 60% of all gun sales do undergo a background check. All we're talking about is expanding background checks to the other 40% of gun sales, which is millions of guns that don't. If you're a dangerous person, are you going to go get a gun from a licensed dealer who will perform a background check or from someone who won't? I mean, the answer is clear, and that's how guns get into the hands of felons and domestic abusers and the dangerously mentally ill.
Shannon Watts, great to have you with us. I know it's a day that you've been waiting for a long time to see what the president did yesterday, and hopefully this will work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane Kleeb is the director of Bold Nebraska. She lives and works the land in Nebraska. She is a fabulous activist, and she has written a piece for our website at wegoted.com talking about this seizure that has taken place out in the middle of Oregon. And she writes on our blog, on our website, wegoted.com, that Bundy is all hat, no cattle. She'll visit us when we come back here on Ed Schultz's commentary. Stay with us.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
Good to have you with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary from the nation's capital, Center for American Progress. The story that's unfolding and has been for days in Oregon, where these patriots, as they call themselves, have barricaded themselves into a wildlife refuge over a land dispute that a family is having with the Bureau of Land Management. I think most Americans are seeing this story, and the first thing they ask is, what are these nut jobs doing? I wanted to get the perspective of a landowner, someone who lives and works the land and has their whole life. Jane Kleeb, our great friend, she is the director of Bold Nebraska. She has been heading up this citizen advocacy group since early 2010 and has been one of the most effective advocacy organizations in this country. Stopping Keystone, obviously, was their marquee achievement. She wrote a piece for our website, wegoted.com, and I appreciate it so much. Bundy is all hat, no cattle. And we'll get to that. But this is Ammon Bundy, who has joined the occupiers in Oregon, and the rhetoric is unbelievable.
These people need relief, and that is why we're there. And we will not abandon them. We are going to take a defensive position because these matters are so important and because freedom is so precious, that we will not back away from this. We also have other patriot groups close, Oregon Constitutional Guard, the Idaho 3%, and other groups that are deploying as we speak and are getting here as quickly as possible. We're going to
form an army is basically what he wants to do. I mean, that's he's grandstanding in a big way, using this issue to bring together a bunch of radicals against the government. I want Jane Kleeb's take on all of this. Jane, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Ed.
You say that he's all hat, no cattle. Unpack this for us. It all started with a prescribed burn, didn't it?
Yeah, so the Hammonds family, which is the family that Bundy says he's standing up and defending, which they've been very public that they don't want his help and don't think that his tactics of taking over wildlife refuge with guns is an appropriate thing. So, but the Hammonds family has been dealing with some issues with the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, for several years. It's gone back, over 10 years, where they've done a couple prescribed burns that have gotten out of control. There's always two sides to a story, and I think in small towns, things get piled onto each other. And so I think it's important to know that, one, what they did was wrong, that they set fire to public BLM land that they should not have. Mm-hmm. But their side of the story is that they were trying to do a prescribed burn in order to protect land that essentially, because of climate change, I will say, the land that they were essentially trying to do a prescribed burn on, so it wouldn't, a fire that was trying to kind of come onto their land wouldn't get out of hand even further. But they did it wrong. They didn't do it with the proper permits, which they should have. But things have just kind of piled on, personality conflicts between local BLM land managers and, the ranchers of the Hammond family. And so it's a really kind of complicated and long, torrid story. But the Bundy family has nothing to do with the Hammonds, and they've inserted themselves into an issue when they should not have.
So they're using this to grandstand and draw attention to themselves.
Absolutely. And, what frustrates me most is that Bundy's wearing a cowboy hat and cowboy boots, essentially pretending to be a rancher, which he's not. He doesn't ranch with his father. He lives in Arizona. He runs a car valet service, which, several news outlets have now kind of really shown a light on him, that he recently took a $530,000 grant from the government, from the Small Business Administration. And so here he is talking bad about the government and how the government is so evil, and yet taking government money to subsidize his small business.
Well, it's amazing when you look into the background of some of these nut jobs. Where's this going to go? What's the solution? What do you think the government's going to do? I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that we got another Waco on our hands.
They are itching for a gun to be fired on them. There's just no question about it. They now consider themselves activists in the likes of Rosa Parks, which is what, Bundy tweeted recently. It is terrifying that it has gone to this point, but I also put a lot of blame onto the Republican Party. from as early as 2009, when they were stoking the fires of the far-right folks who considered themselves part of the Tea Party. They're the ones responsible for all of this heated hate towards the government. It's surprising that Republicans have actually spoken out against the Bundy family versus what they did last time, where they were essentially hugging them and encouraging them to take the government on. But I do fear that they are waiting for a bullet to be shot, that one of their guys will be tired and hungry and start to shoot themselves. So I do think that it is an escalated situation, and I know, our government and our brave, folks in the military, National Guard are probably on pins and needles right now.
Jane Kleeb, Bold, Nebraska. She has written a piece on her website at WeGotEd.com. Bundy is all hat, no cattle. You also bring up big oil and what has happened with land grabs in this country by big corporations. What about that?
Rick Santorum was recently on MSNBC talking about the Bundy situation, and he essentially said, look, what they are doing is wrong, but I agree with them about, eminent domain and the government taking land away from farmers and ranchers. And he has so got it backwards. What's happening with big oil is they are working hand in hand with the BLM, and that's what Bundy should be, outraged about. They continue to hand out oil, gas, coal leases on public land owned by all of us as taxpayers to do their polluting extraction activities. And that's the thing that's taking land away from farmers and ranchers, because I know folks don't quite get it, and then they say that farmers and ranchers are takers because they're grazing on public land for lower prices than they would on private land. But reality is, farmers and ranchers, when they do that, they are essentially adding to the soil health. When you have cattle on the land, it's what it was back in the day when, farmers and ranchers really had more control of the land. It's better for the land for cattle to graze on it than it's just to sit there. That is just a fact. And I talk about that a little bit in the blog piece.
Yeah. What should the government do? Just stand down and just let the enthusiasm die? Is that a solution? Would that happen? Could that happen? And would it be effective?
Eventually I do think that they're just going to run out of food. And I think that the government should essentially make sure that they have no access to food, no access to water, no access to electricity. So the Bundy folks do have to stand down. I don't think that the government should go in there with force. And I just think that would escalate things and essentially play into what they want to happen. So I think what the government's doing right now is exactly what they should be doing. But I also think the government, on the much larger issue of BLM land, should stop giving leases to the oil and gas companies and should start really healing relationships with farmers and ranchers around these small towns. It's a problem. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's a problem. The government is working hand in hand with big oil when they should be healing relationships with farmers and ranchers to protect the land.
Jane Kleeb, always great to visit. Appreciate your work, and thanks so much.
Thanks, Ed.
Bold, Nebraska. Jane Kleeb with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. You can see her work at WeGotEd.com. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team bringing this production from Washington, D.C. Center for American Progress. We're back tomorrow.